The 2021 NBA playoffs have brought many things, and one of those things is the emergence of plenty of young players, many of them from the 2018 draft class, which is looking very, very strong. So, with these new developments, I thought I'd do a 2018 draft redraft. Just see how these players are getting on and stacking up. And this is also probably more of a ranking than a redraft since I'm not looking at fit or things like that, but rather just the players, how good they are, and how good they could be in the future. So with that being said, let's get right into it, starting with the number one pick so it's a bit less confusing. And obviously, this is still Luka Doncic, a player who can average 28 points, 8 rebounds, 9 assists, and who in my mind is a future MVP, someone who can score at an elite level, both inside when he gets into the paint, a very crafty finisher, but also from the outside. His step back three was really falling in these playoffs, and he's shown improvement as a shooter, and even though the percentages still might not be great, he can certainly hit big shots and high difficulty shots. And yeah, I still think he's the obvious best player in this draft class, and I think he will be when they all retire. So, number one pick, Luka Doncic. At number two, Trey Young. I think he's probably consistently been the second best player in this draft class. Though he has had ups and downs, I think his value at the start of this season was a lot lower than it is now. He's certainly been great in these playoffs, really showing that he can win and he can be a successful player, taking the Hawks to the conference finals and also sort of holding up defensively as well, which seemed like a big concern. Someone who can average 25 points and 9 assists and is really a massive dual threat offensively. Obviously, he has the threes, but he's cooled off those a bit. He's more of a pick and roll playmaker now, finding Capella for lobs, hitting floaters, getting his teammates involved, and then being able to take over late in games with his variety of scoring moves, whether it be the threes, but mostly getting inside and also getting to the free throw line. Even though it's pretty annoying when he's drawing fouls, it's still very effective, and he has impressed a lot in these playoffs, and I think he's probably the consensus number two. Now it gets a bit trickier. Obviously, plenty of players, Ayton, Jaren Jackson Jr., but with a number three pick, I'm going to go with Shai GilgeousAlexander. Someone who can average 24 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, someone who has size, who's 6'6", and who's a very, very versatile guard who can be very good at a lot of different things. He's a good shooter, he's a good scorer, has a herky-jerky play style where he always seems to be able to get to his spots and knock down a shot. He's also a pretty solid defender and a good playmaker, so really a guard who is very good at a lot of things and is going to be very good for a very long time. I think he has the potential to take the next step. He's the man OKC is building around, and I would put him as the number three pick just because of just what he's shown, the variety of skills he's shown, and being a 6'6" ball handler. That's something that's very, very valuable in the modern NBA. So I would say Shai GilgeousAlexander, the third pick. And then at number four, I'm going to go with Michael Porter Jr., someone who averaged 19 points a game, but was a lot more after Jamal Murray went down with an injury. Grabbed 7 rebounds. I think he's a very good rebounder and has a lot of size. Someone who's 6'10", but shoots 45% from 3. Something we've almost never seen, and the players we have seen it in have all been elite. Guys like Kevin Durant, Dirk Nowitzki, Karl-Anthony Towns are the only guys who I can think of who can match that. And Porter Jr. certainly has potential to be an all-time great just off of how good a shooter and scorer he is alone at this very young age, how well he plays off ball and off of guys like Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. Just someone with incredible raw talent who you just don't. He's such a rare player and such a unique player. Obviously, the worries with him are the defense. He's still not great, even though he has improved. And then also the injuries. That's what dropped him in the draft. He could have been the number one overall pick if not for back injuries. And he has struggled with a couple injuries in the NBA. Missed his whole rookie season. But Still the number 4 overall pick for me, just off of the talent alone. Okay, number 5, finally DeAndre Ayton. Maybe a bit too low for some people, just given of how good he's been in these playoffs. My reasoning for this is I think the 4 guys above him have superstar potential and are just a bit more valuable, almost just because of their positions. I feel like the gap between, let's say, Michael Porter Jr. or what Michael Porter Jr. could be in the future, and your average small forward is massive. Whereas the gap between DeAndre Ayton, even though he's a very, very good player, and your average center just isn't as big, and that's just the reality with centers. DeAndre Ayton, he isn't a superstar center, but he's very, very good, and he has been very, very good in these playoffs, helping the Suns get to the finals. Someone who can average 15 points, 11 rebounds, a very good good defender with his ability to protect the rim. He's fouling a lot less, which I really like. Just playing good fundamental hands-up defense. And someone who is also willing to run in transition and set screens and get to the rim and be a lob threat. His gravity on rolls is very good and helps the offense a lot. And yeah, just a very, very solid center and someone who's very athletic and who can make plays on both ends of the court. The only downside for me is he's not really an elite post player. I don't think he's a future defensive player of the year, so he doesn't really have that one elite thing that would make him, a future MVP or something like that. But certainly a player who's going to be very, very good. Someone in that fringe all-star role who's going to be very, very good for a very long time. Okay, the 6th pick, I'm going to go with Jaren Jackson Jr., someone who has struggled with injuries but has also shown great potential. Averaged about 17 points per game, not this season because he's injured for a lot of it, but the season before. A very good shooter from 3-point line, even though his form is quite unorthodox. He can rein him in, and then he's also, like, what you see in him and what the potential is defensively. Someone who's 6'7", who you ideally could protect the rim very well and guard on the perimeter. And that versatility and switchability is very valuable in the modern NBA. And he does have the ideal skill set defensively for a future defensive player of the year in the modern NBA. So whether he'll ever be able to hit that level with injuries and things like that, I don't know. But certainly has a lot of potential and is comfortably number 6 for me. Okay, I think that's sort of the top tier. Obviously, you can tier that how you like, but now we get, I think, to a tier below. And with the 7th pick, I'm going to go with Mikal Bridges, someone who averaged 14 points per game, shooting 43% from 3. And he's just the ideal 3-and-D role player for the modern NBA. Someone who doesn't need the ball but can go spot up in the corner. He can set screens too. He can do a little bit of off-ball stuff, but not like a few times when Booker got double teamed, he'd flash to the elbow and hit a mid-range jumper, but not someone who is gonna be a superstar, but someone who's gonna play his role, be a great 3-point shooter, and be a very, very good defender. I think he's gonna be in contention for all defense teams throughout his career. I think he'll definitely make a few. And, he's just a guarantee, someone who can fit on every team. So that's why he's going number 7. And then number 8 is Collin Sexton, someone who's probably more talented than Mikal Bridges, but doesn't fit as well with other players. He can definitely score the ball. That's definitely his biggest trait or advantage. Averaged 24 points per game, but he's sort of a 6'1" guard without great playmaking. He's not really a natural point guard, but he's sort of too small to be a shooting guard. And he is a shooting guard, but it's not ideal, obviously, just with his height. So, yeah, he's number 8, Collin Sexton. Number 9 is Gary Trent Jr. for me. Someone who averaged 15 points per game and is a very tough defender and good shooter. Again, a player you can slot in many places. We obviously saw him with the Blazers, being a very good catch and shoot guy. And then now with the Raptors, with the injuries they had, he got to show a bit more off the dribble, a bit more shot creation, which he definitely has, all while still being a tough defender. So, yeah, number 9 for me is Gary Trent Jr. Number 10, Miles Bridges, another Bridges. This one averages 13 points per game and 6 rebounds, and playing on the Hornet, just his lob gravity and the fact that he's a lob threat makes him a great fit with LaMelo Ball. But he's also someone who can stretch the floor, shot 40% from 3 this season. So if you look at that, that's a very ideal complementary package with a playmaker like LaMelo, or like there is many of them in the NBA. So yeah, a player who can be a good offensive piece on a good team, Miles Bridges. Okay, number 11, I'm going with Robert Williams. Maybe a bit of a reach, but I really like his potential. Averaged 8 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 blocks in only 19 minutes a game. So someone who is just a monster defensively, with his ability to block shots and protect the paint. Maybe positionally he is, and fundamentally he's not as good as other great rim protecting centers, but his athleticism and just his shot blocking is incredible. And then offensively, nothing special, but he can set screens and catch lobs, which is sort of what you want from your center in the modern NBA. And he's also a pretty solid rebounder. Had 9 blocks in a playoff game this year. So number 11 is Robert Williams. Okay, number 12, I'm going to go with Kevin Huerter. Someone who also benefited a lot from these playoffs, like many Hawks did. Averages 12 points per game, is a 6'7" 2 guard who is really solid all-around player. He has a little bit of playmaking in him. He can run a few pick and rolls, but he can also spot up and hit catch and shoot threes, and he's also a pretty decent defender with his size. So number 12 is Kevin Huerter. Number 13, Jalen Brunson. Averaged 12.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 3.5 assists. And for me is near the ideal backup point guard. He can run pick and roll. He can shoot a little bit. He can play make. And, obviously the size is holding him back, but just a very solid NBA player who was in contention for 6th Man of the Year this season. And then finally, the number 14 pick, I'm going to go with Mitchell Robinson, another center with a lot of potential, 8 points, 8 rebounds, 1.5 blocks. The thing with him is, obviously the potential is there defensively and, as a lob catcher offensively, but he needs to stay healthy and he needs to stop fouling, though he has improved that a little bit. But if he can fix that out, he could be a very solid center in the NBA. So that's my 2018. It's more of a ranking than a redraft, but yeah, anyways, thanks for watching this video, guys. Leave a like, subscribe to this channel for more NBA content, and I'll see you guys next time.